or some edible landscapes that are just a little bit offbeat and maybe underutilized as a food. Next month, I will be giving a talk on elements of landscape design. And all right. So when we think of growing our own food, I know the first thing that comes to mind are vegetable gardens, herbs, and here in around Houston, definitely citrus trees. But we're going to be talking about here today is utilizing shrubs and trees that serve a dual purpose. They may be ornamental, so they're attractive, or they have a function like serve as a hedge or provide shade, but then they also provide food. A number of these plants can't even be found in the grocery store. Oh, I thought, okay, I'm going to hold on a minute. It is showing that I am sharing my screen. So, Paul, are you saying it is showing I'm sharing my screen? So I'm just going to unshare and then share again. All right, so we just have a few technical difficulties, but we're going to get through this. Again, I do not have any incoming audio for some reason. It just worked yesterday. All right, Paul, so just let me know if this is sharing now.
You're sharing. I can see and hear you.
Are we good?
You're good.
Okay, all right. So you already heard my introduction. So here's the title slide. And this was where I was talking about utilizing trees and shrubs that serve a dual purpose. I think I left off that a lot of these foods cannot actually be found in the grocery store. But the only thing is there's been trouble in really, I think, figuring out what to actually do with those fruits. And so some of those do go unused. All right, I am going to assume everything sounds good and continue. So the 5 shrubs and trees I'm going to cover today are pineapple, guava, loquat, persimmon, Barbados cherry, and fig. Maybe you're familiar with all of these, or perhaps there's a couple that will be brand new to you. So the first one's going to be pineapple guava, Bajoa celowiana. This is a medium to large evergreen shrub. These are great for hedges, definitely great for hedges. You can see in the top photo, there's three lined up. They're probably about 10 feet apart at center. But they can also be used in pots. They're just going to, behave a little differently, and you can even espalier these too. So they're going to have really showy blooms in the spring. We will see those in a minute, and it will produce fruit in the fall. They are generally not produced commercially. New Zealand looks like they have the commercial thing down on these. But here they do bruise really easily, so that could discourage more, it being commercial. And one note about fruit set, some of these varieties are self-pollinating, but there are reports that really it's best if these are planted in a grouping in more than one variety, you may get a better fruit set. The other thing too is you'll see a lot of pollinators, but maybe all the pollinators don't get to all the flowers. So you can try to hand pollinate. One of the tricks that I saw that I thought was pretty ingenious was, especially with this size of shrub, which is about 6 feet, is using a broom and just tapping all the flowers. So why is this? Now, offbeat is subjective by me, but why do I consider this offbeat? Well, number one, it's not even a guava, but it's in the common name. The other name for it is acerola, but guava it's still in the myrtle family, it's just a different species. The second reason is that they are very unusual flowers. We'll take a closer look at them, but you can see right here right away, there's a number of bright red stamens are, coming upright. So they're very identifiable. And this is the best part, those flowers are edible. It isn't like other flowers that you hear that they're edible, and then when you taste them, you're like, yeah, that just tastes like a flower. These are actually really good. They don't taste like flowers. So the fruit, as you see in the upper left, is green yellow flesh. It's about 2 to 3 inches long. That flesh and that pulp is edible. You can just cut this right in half and scoop it out. All of these fruits today really seem to take on a subjectiveness when it comes to taste. But some of the reports are apple, pineapple-y, and it's the notable nutrients are fiber and vitamin C. And again, New Zealand considers these a superfood. So we're going to talk about the edible flowers. Just look at these flowers. They're so beautiful. So there's 3 photos here, and I'm going to treat them like Goldilocks and the 3 bears. So the upper right photo, those petals have just opened, and they're really firm, and they're not right. They don't have that flavor yet. The photo to the right, you can see a lot of that firmness has left. They're a little past. So they're not the best. They taste better than the ones on the left, but certainly not the best. And the ones on the bottom are just right. So you can see that they're still a bit firm, but that flavor is like nothing I've ever tasted in a flower. It really, to me, tasted like berries. You can eat the petals alone in salads, fruit salads, cake decorations. But my favorite way was just to eat the petals. I put them in the ice cream right here, and it was good, but I think it lost a little bit of the flavor. So I preferred to eat them plain. I did find one single recipe online to make a jam out of the petals. And basically it was a mix of apples, water, the petals, and it turned out. It was a little bit of a pear flavor. It definitely didn't taste all the way like apples, which, I wasn't sure if it was going to happen because they were part of the ingredients. So enjoying the harvest. These do only last a few days. And again, they can bruise easily, so you want to take care not to knock them around. Salads, that bottom left photo has a salad with some, it looks like mandarins. You can eat them preserved. Really, almost everything that we talk about today can be preserved in jams, jellies. Obviously, there's a lot of sugar that goes into that. And so I'm going to try to provide some alternatives to how to use these things without just resorting to the preserves. Baking, smoothies, ice cream. So the recipe that I have here, I'm not posting the whole recipe just because visually it would take up a lot of room. But this is a no-churn pineapple guava ice cream, and it comes from Cooking on the Weekends, and it looks really delicious. I am going to provide a resource sheet with all of these recipes. I'll talk about that later. So the loquat, Eriobotria japonica. This is a small-sized evergreen tree. It can grow a little taller, but it can also grow in containers. They really are beautiful trees. They have fragrant white blooms, early winter, produces fruit in the early spring, and these are not commercially produced. You can see how they form at the tip of the branches and in clusters, but they bruise very easily. There is a small commercial production along the coast of California, but They're not really, we wouldn't see many. Julie Men is, oh, you know what? I'm going to have to hold. I'm going to hold just one moment. I have to check my cord. All right, I am back. I'm sorry about that. This morning definitely hasn't gone that smoothly, but we are still doing pretty well. All right, so this tree, I think I left off, it produces in clusters. The fruit quality can really vary in Texas, so we definitely don't use it here or grow them commercially here. Julie, she may have already posted the link, and I think that was the link for an eggy hort. Mild winters here really will produce a bumper crop, so that's pretty cool. All right. So why is it offbeat? The first reason is it's underutilized, and really a lot of these fruits today could be considered that. The loquat is kind of like if you've ever heard of the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. If you haven't had a loquat, your neighbor doesn't have a loquat, someone you know has a loquat. So they're fairly common, but what is not common is for those fruits to actually be harvested seriously and eaten like other fruits. The second offbeat quality is that it winters and it blooms in the winter. With the previous slide, you could see it's fairly cold hardy, but in those climates, you're not going to produce fruit because it blooms straight in the middle of winter, which is good for us because it provides a really great accent in the winter. And then those seeds, if you have not had a loquat, you can tell by the picture, but those of you that have know exactly what I mean. There's definitely less pulp because those seeds take up the center. It can have 1 to 5 seeds, and they do have a little bit of cyanide in them, just similar to apples. And then the bottom picture is a neighborhood tree, and it really does not convey how beautiful it is as an accent with those long, glossy, dark green leaves. They're very beautiful. So the fruit, it has an apricot yellow flesh, 1 to 2 inches long, so a little smaller than the previous. That the skin is edible. Again, a wide range of interpretation when it comes to taste. Pear, apples, grapes. Again, you cut in half, get rid of the seeds, and then you can just scoop it out. Those skins are edible, but some of them can be tough, so that doesn't bother some folks. They just want to scoop it out and throw the skin away. And the top left picture really shows what we probably would love a loquat to look like. And the bottom picture is what it actually looks like. So it's really hard not to get them bruised, but it's still such a lovely flavor. And their nutrient is really vitamin A. And I'll say also, the birds love these. The birds even eat the petals that I talked about on the pineapple guava. And actually, I didn't mention with the pineapple guava that you can actually take those petals off and not disturb that ovary, so it still produces the fruit. So you get to enjoy it twice. But the birds love that. They love the loquats. So usually when they're ripe, you'll know because the birds will come. So enjoying the harvest. This one will last a little bit longer, 1 to 2 weeks in the refrigerator. Just kind of, wrap it up. Fruit salads. This bottom left picture I have on a resource page that I have that I'll talk about later. It is a loquat avocado salad. Like, I'm there, right? Aren't we all? And to the right, I did not include this one, but it's a loquat upside down cake by the Austin Chronicler. So that looks delicious. And then, of course, you can experiment with this fruit and just substitute it with for any recipes that call for stone fruit. When it comes to baking, a lot of times you'd want to choose a fruit that's a little bit less mature, so just slightly immature. And one last thing, those leaves on the tree can actually be boiled to make a tea. So there's a whole lot more that goes on with this loquat than we realized. So this recipe is a pico de gallo, perfect here in Houston with all our wonderful, tasty tortillas. This was in the Chronicle. We're going to post this. This will also be listed, but they had some other recipes in there. And but it is acid because the fruit is a little bit acidic. You can offset it with sweet, but it's not so acidic that when you cut it, you still want to, if you're going to do it in salads, you want to like drizzle lemon juice to prevent browning. So the Oriental persimmon, this is in contrast to the Texas persimmon. We're not going to focus on the Texas persimmon today. That one is native. This one does originate from China, Japan, Diospyros kaki. It is a smaller deciduous tree. You can tell right here that it has fall foliage. How wonderful. It has whitish yellow flowers in the spring and then produces fruit in the fall. So these ones are sweeter than the Texas persimmon, but even among the Oriental persimmon, there's going to be, we cannot possibly cover them all, but some of them are more astringent, some of them are sweeter. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So why is it offbeat? Definitely underutilized. I only used this twice, but I said probably all of them could be fall under here. I feel like this one's underutilized because maybe, in general, some folks just do not know how to use this fruit. I know I certainly didn't when I first had the opportunity to eat one. The fall foliage. I mean, look at that. There's greens, oranges, and reds. And here in Houston, we'll take that when we can get it. But there's a bonus. After those gorgeous leaves have fallen, look at that top picture. The fruit is still left on the tree. I mean, that's a piece of art right there with that blue sky behind it. They do ripen on or off the tree, but really, the longer you can leave it on the tree, the better. And, it looks beautiful. And the soft texture. I think it's a texture that perhaps we equate to a fruit being overripe and not good anymore. When that happens with a persimmon, a lot of times it means it's a perfect time to eat it. So they're soft and creamy. All right, so the fruit, they can range anywhere from yellow to red, as you see in the bottom pictures. They're a bit bigger, 2 to 3 inches in diameter. The taste, again, is very subjective. You eat it the same, but within this group of persimmons, you can really, there's a lot of diversity. So on the left, you can see how soft it is. And of course, it's yellow. On the left, you can see that it's reddish and a bit more solid. So there's a variety called fuyu. It's shaped more like a tomato, and it's more solid. It's as soon as that skin turns like orange and it feels firm, it's ready. But and it's non-astringent. But the other ones are astringent, and you have to leave those on the tree longer. It's the peel that has the tannins that makes it so astringent. So the only way to get around that is time. Leave it to ripen longer, and then it'll become sweet. So enjoying the harvest. These actually last a few weeks and maybe even longer, depending on how you store them and what varieties they are. Some people even dry them. It's a really good Google search. If you go on and look, it does look like an art form in and of itself, how they tie all of them together and dry them over the winter. So they can be added to salads, but really those ones like you see in the upper left, that's going to be that firmer version variety, the fuyu. They can actually be baked similar to apples, but the other ones are going to have that softer taste. The bottom left photo is a baked persimmon. So that's going to be on the resource page too. That looked really, really interesting and low sugar, right? Let me see if there was something, pureeing, pureeing the ripe fruit. So if you have an overabundance, which, that's going to happen with any of these, you can actually puree that ripened fruit and to add to recipes or freeze to be able to use later. I always roast a pumpkin, and I always have roasted pumpkin puree in the freezer. So that's really easily stored in a Ziploc bag and freezing it flat. And then baking and smoothies. This is low acid. So again, when you're preserving, you want to provide like an acid, so like a lemon juice. And this recipe, pork with persimmons. Julie, if you can post that link. This is a really great link. It's to a North Carolina extension, Lenoir County. It has some puree pointers, recipes, and then of course this recipe. So I thought this was a really rich resource. But when you look at that, the ingredients, 2 pounds of pork to 1 pound of persimmon, you can tell that's probably going to make like a really nice creamy sauce for that pork. All right. It's really hard for me to take any questions because I don't have any audio. So I'm just going to ask Paul right now if there's anything that I can answer. And I'm just going to see if he can answer on my phone. So I'll just give a few seconds for that. All right, I am going to go ahead then, and then we'll try to revisit this at the end. So the next plant is a Barbados cherry, Malpighia emarginata. This is in contrast to Malpighia glabra, which is a smaller version. That one grows 4 to 6 feet. It is a bit more popular, and those cherries are smaller. And I think with that one, in general, people are less aware that they are edible fruits, but they are too. But this one grows a bit taller, 10 to 18 feet. It can definitely grow on that tall end or even taller if left unchecked. But if you're taking care of it, you can keep it to around 10 feet. It is multi-stemmed, so you can kind of see it grows a little bit more dense on the left, and evergreen. But this also can be grown as an ornamental, a hedge, or even in a container. Those pink flowers, I think, are just adorable. How they're just a very hot pink, and how they narrow in at the base. So I think they're very unique looking flowers. And then that fruit is produced in the late summer. So why is it offbeat? So the one name is Barbados cherry, another one is acerola, but it isn't a cherry. It's just cherry-like. It's a completely different. It's a completely different fruit. It is extremely high in vitamin C, and not just to say it's high in vitamin C, it is unusual. So from the USDA Food Data Central, based on a 2,000 calorie diet, 1 cup of oranges has 106% of your daily needed vitamin C, and the Barbados cherry has 1,827%. So compared to oranges, the same amount in 1 cup has, I think, over 1,700% more than oranges. So it is like really high. And because it does have an acid, you can actually use the juice of this to prevent browning. So just like any other type of ascorbic acid, lemon, and the fruit. So you want to pick the fruit when it's a very dark red purple on the outside. Otherwise, it's going to be too tart. And on the inside, you can see it's just a really bright yellow. There are 3 flat seeds in there. They kind of have wings on them. It's sweet and sour, and again, very subjective when it comes to the taste. A little bit like a cherry, but not really. A little bit like an apricot, but not really. And again, it has it has vitamin C, but then it also has fiber. So enjoying the harvest. This proved to have fewer recipes and fewer uses that were probably really tested and fleshed out. But because of the high water content and how juicy they are, number one, fresh, but juice, jelly, syrup. These are also great for freezing. So you can extend that harvest by freezing and then eating them, or using them in in a recipe. The recipe here is a salsa. So in my opinion, if you add cilantro to anything, it's going to be awesome. So I think I have not tried this recipe, but it's probably first on the list because it looks delicious. And, just like most any other fruit, the longer that it's stored, you're going to have a decrease in the vibrancy of the color and the nutrients. And our last plant, Ficus corica. So this is the common fig. There are many types of fig, but around Houston, or really in Texas, the most common fig is the common fig. And this one can grow a lot taller than 10 to 12 feet, but that's generally where you find it, and about the same in width. It is deciduous. Most of you are familiar with figs and that big, beautiful lobed leaves. It blooms in the spring and summer, and then fruits in the summer and sometimes in the fall. These are commercially produced. I just saw figs in the grocery store a couple days ago, actually, but they do need a lot of sun. And then the other thing to comment on that I learned firsthand is that sap is a latex. It looks like a milk. It's just pure white, but it can cause irritation depending on depending on the person. So why is it offbeat? There are no visible flowers. So if you're just a little bit familiar with figs, or even fairly familiar, think about that. Do you ever remember seeing a flower? No. The reason is because it blooms on the inside of that structure. So the blooms are not on the outside. they're inside. So what we are eating is not fruit, it's actually stem tissue. It's hundreds of female flowers that went unfertilized, in our case for the common fig, that went unfertilized. Because here the common fig usually only have female flowers and they self-pollinate. But yeah, that's stem tissue. So right in here, those are all flowers that just didn't have anywhere to go. They couldn't develop. And then the other different aspect to the fig is that it's the one fruit that has a little bit of calcium to it. So the fruit, there's a wide range of variety, golden all the way to red with the flesh, with the skin the same. The bottom left picture is actually a fig that is not ripened, but the yellow fig on the left is. So it can be a gold all the way to, a purple. Candy. If you pick them right, they taste like candy, but it really depends on the variety. These need to be allowed to ripen on the tree. I have taken shortcuts and picked them a little bit sooner, but they really only fully ripen on the tree. So you have to be really quick at it. And then, of course, they have fiber, calcium, and potassium. They even have a little tiny bit of protein. So enjoying the harvest. So you can have them fresh. What I didn't have on the last slide was, or the slide, is how long they last. They only last, once picked, 1 to 3 days, depending on the variety. And they do bruise really easily, so they go straight into the refrigerator and just work with them very carefully so they do not get all bruised up. But they go well in salads, preserved, paired with cheese, definitely baking. Now, this one, I do not have a recipe listed here. I have the LSU Ag Center. Julie should be posting that. And this is a really great resource. It not only talks about the fig and the plant, sorry, but it gives recipes for preserves, dried figs, cookies, and cake. I think it's a really great resource. And finishing up, this is what happens when I get around a tree that has just started to be harvested. So there's a jam. That's not an official canned jam. It's more like a freezer jam because I wanted less sugar. Sugar does not provide more safety. It does not make it safer to eat. It just extends how long it will be good for. But again, salads with goat cheese, with Parmesan, the two crostadas here, the one is a goat cheese spread, the other is the jam. So I just straight took the jam out of the jar. Roasted figs caramelize beautifully just because of their sugar content. All right, that's about it. So we're going to go to the resources. This is not all the resources, but these are a lot that I used. So the Aggie Hort fact sheets, I did not list all the individual ones. That is the website just to get all of those. I believe it's a fruit and nut, the fruit and nut link. But Julie's going to post the survey link right now. And if you complete this survey, we will email out this resources PDF for all the things that I've covered. So there's at least a couple recipes for each of these fruits. Also some preserving links. One of them is preserving without or with lower sugar. And then at the top, all the resources. So if you fill out this survey. She's going to post it in the link, but it's also going to be emailed out to you. The survey is really important because we have no in-person education right now, and this is our only way to be able to provide education, but we still need to be able to document that and see who we are actually serving in the county. If we do not know who we're serving, then we don't know where to direct our attention. And the last slide is just my contact information. So brandy.keller@ag.tamu.edu. All right, I am going to, I think it's probably going to be difficult to answer any questions. But I'll check with Paul quickly to see if you have any obvious questions that I can answer. Otherwise, you can email me, and once that survey is done, we will email that PDF out of the resources. Any questions, Paul? Or questions that maybe we can't answer later on?
Yeah, I'm assuming if you have a specific.
So I'm going to hand it over to Paul. Thank you so much for joining me today. And next week, Paul's going to be talking about ornamental grasses. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you, Brandy. We did have some minor technical difficulties, but we were able to work through it. If you have specific questions for Brandy, please send her an email. Her email address was right there, brandy.keller@ag.tamu.edu. We want to thank you all for joining us. Next week, as Brandy said, I will be speaking on ornamental grasses for the landscape. And keep an eye out for our lineup for August. We will be covering, I'll just give you brief, the topics will be earth-kind landscape practices. We will cover home lawn maintenance and care part 2. Third week, we will cover focusing on vegetable varieties. And the last week, we will cover elements of landscape design. So again, you will be receiving a link to the survey if you haven't grabbed a link online already. And you will also receive a link, or you can just check the YouTube channel. And this video will probably be posted there either later this afternoon or first thing tomorrow. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.